Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Early Wedge. My name is Sia Nejad. I'm joined by Mike McClure and Rick Gehman to talk all things Genesis Scottish Open. We will touch on the Open Championship later in the show. Mike, I'm going to start with you. You know, we do all these shows not only on the network, but on the SportsLine YouTube page, and things are going really well for the crew of Rick, Mike, Sia, and everybody else. Talk to me about how things are going for you specifically before we talk about some of these headline names.
I'm feeling good. I wasn't feeling great this morning when I watched the first two holes from Ludwig, +2. And, you know, at that point you're thinking, oh, are we headed towards a potential miscut? And then, boy, has he turned things around in a big way. He was someone I was very, very big on heading into the week. A lot of the guys that we kind of talked about in that value range, all playing well. I mean, props to this entire crew, though, the entire Early Wedge crew, because we've all talked a lot of Chris Gotterup over the last month of this year, and he is finally there and leading this field right now. And if you guys continued to follow that, you're likely at least in decent shape for the rest of the weekend.
Rick, that's probably a good place to start. I didn't think I would be opening the show. No disrespect to Chris Gotterup, who, again, Mike says we certainly like. But for him to be 9 under, shooting a 61 today and on top of the leaderboard is pretty remarkable given his pedigree, or I should say lack of pedigree relative to some of the other guys that are near the top of the leaderboard, like your Ludwigs, like your Matt Fitzpatricks, certainly Rory McIlroy in the conversation, along with Xander and let's see, that guy Scotty Scheffler. But what's your reaction, Rick, to the way this top of the leaderboard looks?
Well, I think it's more of the same from Chris Gotterup. I mean, I've said it once, I've said it a million times. He's literally in the best stretch of golf of his career. Now, that was a somewhat low bar entering maybe 2025, but he's been rattling off great finishes. He is no longer just the one skill set golfer. He can bomb it off the tee. That really used to be the only thing that he could do. He's really started to add other dimensions to his game. You're starting to see the consistency come into form, and he goes out and shoots a 61 in round 2 this morning. Now, I think we're going to learn a lot, right? We're going to learn a lot about Chris Gotterup over the course of the next 2 rounds and how he deals with being in the heat of the battle for what would be the biggest win of his life. Guys potentially like Rory McIlroy, Ludwig Oberg, Xander Schauffele trying to chase him down. We're going to learn a lot, but either way, you've got to be pretty thrilled about the way that Gotterup has played the last 2 months and how that trends moving forward.
Absolutely. Chris Gotterup, I mean, listen, he's been doing it in a pretty sustainable way. He gained a ton of strokes putting, like somebody would do when they shoot a 61, by the way, but the ball striking is certainly there for Chris Gotterup like it normally is. Mike, when we look at the guys down the list, and later in the show, we're going to get to the leaderboard, we're going to get to some picks and some outright winners, live outright winners, I should say. We got Harry Hall followed by Matt Fitzpatrick. I don't think there's huge surprises there. Marco Penge is trailing right behind that. But then we get to your guy, Ludwig, who you liked all week, Xander, Rory, Scotty. Is this shaping up to be a tournament that, when it's all said and done after 4 rounds, is it, definitely going to be one of these big ticket guys? Or can the Gotterups, can the Harry Halls, who's certainly like a level below, the Jake Knapps, who are playing well, can they survive 4 rounds here as well?
I think Gotterup definitely can. I think Harry Hall definitely can. I fully expect Xander and Ludwig to be right there, though. If you look at actual live strokes gain data, Xander's leading this event right now, tee to green. He's lost a stroke, a little over a stroke putting, but that's what we were saying about Ludwig after round 1. He was essentially leading after round 1, losing a stroke on the putting greens. I think that both of those guys are right there. And I am very encouraged from what I've seen from Xander. We talked about he had a big run up of about 6-7 events where he was just trending better, getting better, lost it all at the Travelers, got some time off, and that has been awesome to see there. So I do think it's a big name, and we're still, I admit I discounted Rory McIlroy a little bit coming into this, thinking that next week is what he cared about a lot more than this week. He's looked pretty good as well, and he is very much live to go win this golf tournament. So I think it's going to be honestly one of Rory, Xander, or Ludwig that ultimately gets this done.
Rick, it's hard to do this because we're only like a round and 3/4 into the tournament. So I hate to have you do what Mike had to do, thanks to me, which is like, hey, reduce it to 3 big names that are going to win the tournament. With that said, though, I mean, it's not that I think Goddard and Harry Hall and even Matt Fitzpatrick, and Matt Fitzpatrick, by the way, is one of my outrights, but it's not that I think they're going to backpedal necessarily, but it does seem like these big names, Xander, Rory, Ludwig, Scotty, who's going to be up there, it's going to be hard to hold them back. Speak to maybe a couple of those players that you expect to be there Sunday night, or Sunday afternoon.
How about I take it from the opposite side? Because I tend to agree with Mike, right? The Xander profile is insane. Rory's putting the lights out. Like, there's a lot of good stuff from the big boys. But Chris Gotterup's a winner on the PGA Tour. Harry Hall's a winner on the PGA Tour. Matt Fitzpatrick has won a major championship. Nick Taylor, when he gets in the mix, refuses to go away. And we've seen him put together some really solid finishes and metrics over the course of the last couple of months. So it's not going to be necessarily a guarantee that one of these big boys wins it. I think the current state of PGA Tour golf, the tier B players, the tier C players are a lot better than they used to be. They do not fold under pressure like we used to see routinely on Saturday and Sunday. It's still going to be very difficult to beat guys like Xander Schauffele and guys like Rory McIlroy as this championship continues to wind on. But I'm no longer at the point where I just say, Chris Gotterup cannot win this golf tournament, or Harry Hall cannot win this golf tournament. They absolutely can win this golf tournament.
Rick, I want to stick with you real quick because you mentioned the PGA Tour. Obviously, we have the DP World Tour players over here as well. Is there a particular World Tour player that has impressed you through? It doesn't mean like they don't have to have impressed you because they're at the top of the leaderboard, like a Marco Penge, for example. But there was a guy, Francesco Laporta, who I had as top Italian. That bet's already going to cash because the other three are going to miss the cut. There's a lot of guys that have been more on the World Tour than the PGA Tour, but maybe are on the PGA Tour now, like the Antoine Rosners, the Victor Perez's of the world. Yannick Paul is up there, the Paul brothers back from the Outlaw Tour days. I always love seeing their names. Anybody on the World Tour, because I think it's a worthy discussion to have, not just for this tournament, but perhaps for the Open Championship as well.
I mean, I'll continue to do the back padding practice that we're doing right now. But I mean, listen,
yes.
We covered a lot of these guys earlier this week, trying to find those diamonds in the rough. Christopher Wrighton goes out and shoots a 65. He's the Norwegian who was incredibly cheap on DraftKings, and he was incredibly long in the odds market. Martin Koivra, who is a Frenchman who has been piling up great results coming into this event, have continued it. So for the most part, you mentioned Laporta, Sia. For the most part, the guys that have played exclusively on the DP World Tour, they have all competed against each other in the same 5 or 6 events leading up to this one. And the guys that have played well, the guys that have snapped off for a victory, or the guys that have earned 2 top 10s, for example, they've continued to play well. So it's been a really sound result so far for the guys that were expected to help represent the DP World Tour in this co-sanctioned event. They have done just that through almost 36 holes.
Mike, we've talked about some big ticket names, some smaller names that might be on the World Tour, for example. Is there anybody, and by the way, I got to give flowers to some of the guys we've mentioned, or even not, Kevin Hughes near the top of this leaderboard. Again, it's only through 2 rounds. Brian Harmon, Rick, you mentioned Nick Taylor. These were guys that were talked about a lot too. It's just a matter of them actually coming through on that conversation. It's good stuff. But Mike, before we close out the segment, anybody that's disappointed you through a round or 2 rounds here?
I think that you have to talk about Colin Morikawa a little bit. We were all watching intently, right? I personally feel great about the decision that I made and that we all kind of collectively made, that we probably were going to watch very closely, but maybe not be interested in backing him. To be honest with you, just seeing the lone birdie on the card and it being a par 3, that has got to be very discouraging. This course, while it's not the easiest course in the world, it was gettable today, as evident by all the action on the leaderboard. So for me, I'm most disappointed in Colin Morikawa.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Morikawa looks like he's tracking to miss the cut, although he has a chance to sort of save himself here. Justin Thomas, not necessarily having the best of it. Robert McIntyre had a double bogey on 13, so he's fighting to survive the cut line, which I think some people are very surprised with, given he's a recent winner and second place over his last 2. Speaking of that cut line, I think that's what we're going to have to talk about when we come back next on the Early Wedge. It'll be me and Mike and Rick Gehman, and we're going to be talking about this cut line, where it's at, and who's on the wrong and right side of it. That's coming up next on the Early Wedge. We're back on the early wedge, and I'm watching Robert McIntyre, gentlemen, just kind of try to survive the 16th hole, and he's trying to survive this tournament. There's a lot of guys, Mike and Rick, that the rounds aren't done yet, like a Sam Burns, like a Colin Morikawa. I believe Justin Thomas is in that area, certainly Robert McIntyre, who, if they can finish kind of strong, they can get into that cut line, which is likely to be at 1 under par. Rick, let me ask you, which of these guys do you think that I mentioned, or is there another guy, another big name that you think is going to survive the cut here?
Well, Justin Thomas is working hard. Either way, it's probably going to be a disappointing 36 holes for him. You know, this is somebody who has now lost 2 strokes on approach over the course of nearly 2 full rounds. He does get the birdie there on 16 to move to 1 under for the event. So he's there, he's in there. He's just got to hold on over the final 2 holes. But this is not the result that Justin Thomas entered with, is right. He doesn't want to be battling for the cut line. I think that his links history, I think, is a little overblown. You know, he played well at the Open Championship his first 2 times there, hasn't done much since. His Scottish Open and other like links style golf results are not particularly strong, which is kind of surprising because of the way that he has this stellar short game and he's a great ball striker and all that fun stuff. But this isn't 36 holes that are going in the wrong direction for JT, even if he makes the cut. Still time for him to figure things out, but that's been pretty disappointing.
Mike, is there a certain person that you're either A, surprised that they've missed the cut, or maybe they're about to miss the cut, or B, that you're rooting for to make the cut down the stretch because you might have some betting or DFS implications for?
So, Sia, I like to turn things around, and I get that I like to bet unders. I like to root for punts and field goals when we're talking about football. I'm rooting for Robert McIntyre to miss the cut in a huge way because I have zero exposure to him. He's the 2nd most popular golfer, and he was paired a lot with Max Gracerman, who was about the 5th most popular golfer. So Robert McIntyre at 26% owned and 30% in some of the other contests. Him missing the cut here would be a very, very good thing for me.
He was that price in DFS at 9,100. That was very reasonable, given he was first and second over his last 2 in Graserman at 7,800. Very reasonable price as well. That'll take out a lot of the field for sure. I also completely faded Robert McIntyre, but I did not fade Max Graserman. Rick, talk to me about Bobby McIntyre in terms of how he's acquitted himself here. Obviously, very disappointing. Like, should we be that surprised? And for the record, he could still make the cut. Like, don't get me wrong. He's fighting just like JT to make the cut here, but should we be that surprised? I understand the recent history, but it's not like it's Scotty Scheffler we're talking about. I mean, I can't say I'm shocked here.
I think you should be slightly surprised. Yeah. I mean, so there's always this question about how do guys play when they put a lot more pressure on themselves. And we've seen that he's been able to handle that no problem. The runner-up finish to Rory McIlroy, and of course the victory here last year in his title defense, but he's been playing awesome golf. I mean, since the Masters, he's made every single cut. He had the runner-up finish at the U.S. Open. He played well at the Travelers. Like, he has contended and put together some really good finishes. And for the timing to work out where he gets to go back to Scotland and play at the Renaissance Club, a place that he's had such great success, and now he's on the outside looking in to make it to the weekend. Like, yeah, I think that should be surprising. You're right, see, it's not like he's got the longest, most active cut streak in the world going on, but there's certainly a reason why he was popular in DFS. There's a reason why he was the most popular one and done selection. I think there is certainly a level of surprise to this.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess this is me playing the attorney card with semantics. Like, I get it that everybody should be somewhat surprised, but I mean, the idea that a golfer literally not named Scotty Scheffler, who has a great history, is going to miss a cut, I just don't think that should shock anybody. Certainly the left miss concerning for Robert McIntyre off the tee. Mike, we haven't really touched on Scotty Scheffler, who was 4 under with a couple of holes to play. Obviously, you've got betting interests in other places, but it's hard to say that Scotty's not also going to be in the conversation. How are you feeling about his trajectory, potentially up the leaderboard on, not today necessarily, but Saturday and Sunday?
I think he's going to be right there. The question is, if I'm talking about him like being the clear cut favorite to go win the golf tournament still, he's currently sitting -4. I'd like to see him at -6 or -7 after today's round. If I'm going to say he is the clear cut, like Scotty's going to go win this golf tournament still. If he comes in where he's at 4 under, I think that I'm going to lean heavily on Xander, Ludwig, and Rory at that point being, true favorites to go on and win. But with Scotty, I mean, it gets old and boring talking about him sometimes because he's so good at the game of golf that when he doesn't have his A stuff, he's still one of the best players by a pretty meaningful margin. And I mean, you look at some of the live strokes gain data, he's lost strokes putting this week. I mean, he's 1 under on the round right now, 4 under total, and he has lost strokes off the tee today. Like he's still, look at the birdies on the card while losing strokes off the tee. I trust that Scotty will figure that out. He's certainly going to be on the final page of the leaderboard, whether or not he wins it. We'll see what he can do at 16. If he, birdies or maybe even eagles that, look out.
Yeah, I'm literally watching his eagle putt, which looks just to be a couple feet offline. So he should end up birding that, get to -5. I mean, this is really shaping up to be a superstar-ridden leaderboard for the next couple of days. Mike, real quick on the cut line, though, it is looking like we're right here. It's looking like it's going to be 1 under par.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 1 under par, basically 97%. Like it would take some special stuff getting it to -2. No chance we get the even par guys in there. So unfortunately, guys like Max Gracerman on the outside looking in, Robert McIntyre currently on the outside looking in. Will be interesting final few holes there, but -1 is going to be your cut.
It's
other guy, yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Cut, Sia. Sorry, it's just also going to be a huge cut. There's like 82 golfers right now. It's going to be a massive cut if it stays at 1 under.
What are the implications of that, Rick, for the next couple of days in terms of, are we looking at threesomes? What's going to happen there?
Well, they've got like 1 million hours of daylight this time of year, so they should be able to get, if they want to go everybody off 1, they can still do that. I think it'll just create a situation where we've seen a couple of low scores this week where a lot of guys are still in the mix. Maybe not to win, but like a lot of live top 5 bets and stuff like that.
Ooh, live top 5 bets. Professional transition from Rick. We're going to get to some top 5, some top 20, some live outrights, things of that nature. We're also going to touch on some more storylines, some of these big ticket golfers that we certainly need to discuss, not just from a Scottish Open standpoint, but from a next week Open Championship standpoint over at Royal Portrush. We're going to talk about all of that coming up next on the Early Wedge. We are back on the Early Wedge on CBS Sports Network. And gentlemen, I do want to talk a couple more storylines before we get into some bets over, really maybe now, but really over the next couple of days. Mike, storyline time. Let's talk about Ludwig, because again, this is a guy you were on before the tournament. And I think, I don't know, Rick, if you would agree with this, but I feel like the jury was still out on Ludwig in terms of, obviously the upside was there. I didn't play him. I was a little worried about him. I went with a little bit more consistency. We'll see how that plays out for me. But what are you looking at from Ludwig? And are you willing to play him regardless of whether he wins this tournament? Are you already looking at him for the Open Championship?
I am looking at him for the Open Championship. I liked him here mostly because of price point. A lot of what we do, you have to factor in the price point, and I love to embrace variance and volatility. And that is exactly what Ludwig represents to me. You talk about the sentiment about he's potentially lost right now and seeing the results of missed cuts at majors. But I think this year's kind of almost identical to last year for him. You look at, had a couple struggles, had a brilliant finish at the Masters, went on to miss the cut at the PGA Championship, came across the pond, found some success at this event. Look at what he did this year. Had a little bit of a misstep heading into the Masters, rebounded fine in that particular environment with a great finish, went on to miss the cut at the PGA Championship. For me, it was simply, playing him was simply about just embracing the variance, going to a place where he's had success, and taking advantage of a price point that was essentially as low as it's ever been on him since he's been considered a top-tier golfer.
Rick, I want you to remind me of your opinions coming in on Ludwig. Again, I kind of missed the boat here. It is remarkable. Rick, we always talk about how he's kind of a machine, right? It's Patrick McDonald's famous line that the guy's like artificial intelligence. To start off bogey, and now to rattle off 6 birdies, not in a row, but 6 birdies for the balance of his round. Now he's on the par 5 where I don't know where he's sitting on the par 5, but could certainly eagle, maybe birdie that one too. This is the Ludwig experience in terms of the top of his game. Your thoughts on him in this tournament, but also maybe for next week?
He got the software update there on the third tee is apparently what happened. But, Mike and I had talked about this earlier in the week, and I pressed him on Ludwig, quite honestly. And, the thing that we discussed was, this is a skill set play, right? I mean, the pedigree that Ludwig has is awesome. We're playing link style golf overseas in a field that is made up of a lot of different players from a lot of different tours, and there's going to be a lot of variance. And to just take the best guys at the best prices was kind of the path that Mike was going down, and I thought that was making a lot of sense. And when you get Ludwig in the mix, he has this demeanor to him where he's never really rattled. He never thinks the moment is too big for him. Remember, he played Ryder Cup before he played a major championship, and he was like a big part of that Ryder Cup team in Rome. I mean, he's an incredibly impressive player for how young and inexperienced that he is. So it does make sense that as we get to this style of golf, which this week and next week are going to be a bit more random, there's going to be bad breaks that happen to everybody. Banking on that skill set, even if it's not in the greatest form, is a really interesting way to approach it.
Let's talk about another big name, Rick, who I know has at least some level of interest for you, whether it's for next week or maybe for the rest of this week at the Scottish Open. Xander Schauffele. That's another guy that, coming into this tournament, we're just like not really sure what to expect, but it's almost the same point Mike was making about Ludwig, right? We know what the skill set is. We know what the top of the range of outcomes are. It's just that Xander, much like Ludwig this year, just wasn't able to put everything together and take down a tournament, or at least not recently take down a tournament. Rick, your thoughts on how Xander has acquitted himself?
Yes, you have to zoom out for the Xander story a little bit. It's been the year of Scotty. It's been the year of Rory. We've got 5 or 6 guys that have won multiple times on the PGA Tour. Xander Schauffele, 0 victories. And he won 2 majors last year. Scotty Scheffler had a historic year, and we were saying, could Xander still be the player of the year? Did he really have the better year? Will that age better than Scotty's year? And I think there was an expectation that Xander Schauffele was going to have a massive 2025. Now, injury has kept him from doing that, but I love the metrics that he's putting up. Mike talked about it. He's been phenomenal from tee to green this week. He is probably the 3rd best player in the world. I could argue might be the 2nd best player in the world, and there's still a lot of big time golf to be played, right? We've got the Open, we've got the Scottish Open National Championship this week, we've got the Open Championship, we've got the FedEx Cup playoffs. There are opportunities for Xander to make this year look a lot better than it's been, and I'm quite bullish on those chances.
All right, Xander, Ludwig. We got Scotty creeping up the leaderboard. I will mention, for those of you that are watching us and you don't have your eye right now on Robert McIntyre, stuffed one on the 17th, par 3. So he's got a birdie putt to get himself inside the cut line. I couldn't really tell. It looked like it was like 5 or 6 feet. So he's got a really good look at it. I think a lot of people over in Scotland are watching that, but certainly we are too. Mike, talk to me about, selfishly, I have to ask you this question, because we talked about Ludwig, we talked about some of these big ticket names. Guys like Matt Fitzpatrick, guys like Harry Hall are playing really good golf, especially recently. And Matt Fitzpatrick is one of those household names that has not been a household name over the last couple of years, trending in the right direction. Should we expect names like that? Matt Fitzpatrick is just a tier below the names we're talking about. Names like that to be there. Are you kind of out on Matt Fitzpatrick and some of those other names? For example, like a Sepp Straka, who we know can win and has done really well so far. Are you expecting things from them over the next 2 rounds?
I will say, yeah, I think they're both going to solidly kind of stay where they are and be right there. I think they're definitely still long shots to go out there and go win this event. But this Matt Fitzpatrick thing is nothing new if you've been following the early wedge. We've talked about him every week because we kind of have to. It's obvious the way his game has been trending, and you get to a spot like this. So I'm optimistic there. I'm not willing to go invest a bunch personally, but anytime you're capable of putting up a round like this, bogey free, and just where he's been trending over the last month or so, yeah, I would say he's back.
Rick, we're going to touch on Rory McIlroy later on in the show when we discuss briefly Royal Portrush, but how you feeling vibes-wise about Rory McIlroy? Like, I'm not asking you if you're going to bet him outright or if you're going to put a live bet on him coming up when we talk about live bets for this tournament, but this looks pretty promising. Like, if you're a Rory backer, how confident are you for this leg, but the next leg coming up?
Yeah, you should be pretty stoked. I think one of the main conversations around Rory, and he's kind of even alluded to this himself, is, what's my motivation? Can I really get as amped up for these golf tournaments after completing the career Grand Slam? And he'll figure that out. This is kind of a new section of his career, but this is it. I mean, it's like this week, next week, the Ryder Cup. I expect that we are going to get just an immense, fully engaged Rory McIlroy in the discussions around what his driver's been doing over the course of the past couple of months. People don't realize that his putter has been like basically white hot. He's picked up 5 strokes putting this week. There are still places that he can improve and normally would improve to separate himself against the field. So yes, any knocks on Rory over the past couple of months have been severely overblown. You should be pretty thrilled about where you are if you're a Rory backer now or a Rory backer for next week.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy almost picking up 3 strokes with the putter. I'll mention Ludwig on his way to picking up almost 5 strokes with the putter. So he's having a great putting day. Matt Fitzpatrick about 4 strokes. These aren't final numbers, mind you, but they're going to be in the right ballpark. Chris Gotterup 4.5 strokes with the putter. Mike, speaking of Gotterup and speaking of some of these guys near the top, like Fitzpatrick was 7 under. We had Gotterup 9 under. Harry Hall 6 under. Ludwig in the middle of a great round at 5 under. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not asking you to be a weatherman, but the wind is a little up right now in this moment. But over the next 2 days, it does look relatively calm, I believe. Are we looking at a continuation of low scores for Saturday and Sunday?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not expecting a 61 out there again, but I think that you're definitely, to stay where you're at, if you're in the top 5 right now, you better be shooting 4 under to just kind of stay where you're at. At least that's what I'm forecasting for Saturday.
Okay. Well, let's forecast some more stuff, Mike and Rick. Let's talk about maybe some bets we're going to put on the board right here on the early wedge. I've got a couple of long shots to consider, some top 20s. We certainly don't have matchups out for tomorrow since we're in the middle of the round, but we're going to give you some of our recommendations in the live outright, live finishing position market. We'll do it all coming up next on the early wedge. We're back on the early wedge, and it's time to look at the betting board and maybe, just maybe, lay down some bets on some outrights. I'm very intrigued by this leaderboard, gentlemen. I'm very intrigued by what BetMGM has the odds at. If we could pull that up, I mean, we just had Ludwig with another birdie as I'm looking over to my left to see if Robert McIntyre is going to make his birdie on the 17th. But Chris Gotterup, this has been updated, everybody. So Ludwig Oberg is now plus 500 with Chris Gotterup. So just everybody know Ludwig has kind of jumped into the conversation here. We obviously have guys like Scotty and Rory McIlroy trailing right behind. Xander Schauffele is in that 18 to 16 to 1 range. And then my guy, Matt Fitzpatrick, who I have outright, is 10 to 1. As I do want to update everybody, Robert McIntyre did drain his birdie. He's got to survive 18 and par there, and he'll make the cut. Rick, I'm going to start with you. Again, the numbers have changed just a little bit especially after Ludwig's birdie on the 15th. What do you like here, if anything?
Yeah, so real quick, I mean, there's only a couple of guys that are still out on the golf course, but those finishing on the back are getting much easier scoring conditions. It's playing about a stroke easier on the back. 18 is difficult, but there are a couple of scoring opportunities, so you're seeing guys take advantage of that. The one thing that I could not look past was the Xander Schauffele 18 to 1 number that we saw on there. You know, we've talked about how well he's playing from tee to green. We've talked about the pedigree. I realize that there are problems like Ludwig Oberg and Rory McIlroy and other guys that are lurking on this board. But that number is much too long for me with 36 to go. I think that there are a couple of other really interesting plays, but that's the one that I just could not stop staring at as we were showing it up there.
Mike, that's interesting to me as well. I mean, he's 6 under. The problem with really taking any of these guys is look at the top of this leaderboard. And when I say the top, I'm looking like anybody inside the top 20 here who's only going to be a handful of shots back. Chris Gotterup, like we always have that conversation, right? Like, Mike, like who's the real leader, right? I mean, Chris Gotterup, I want to give him his flowers, but I don't think, to your point earlier, he's winning this tournament. You got Harry Hall and Fitz at -9 and -8, but then your boy Ludwig, we've got Scotty Scheffler is lurking, Xander Schauffele at 6 under. I do think 18 to 1 is pretty reasonable there. But regardless, what do you like here? And is there still value on Ludwig?
I think there's still a little value on Ludwig. It's probably disappearing if he birdies one more hole. If he just kind of stays where he's at, I'd be comfortable. But if he birdies another hole, I mean, he's probably going to be plus 300 at that point, in which case I wouldn't be backing that. I would just simply continue to look for a live opportunity much later because it's not going to move drastically further than that at that point. But I think Rick nailed it. I think it's Xander that stands out. You're getting the same number on Xander that you were pre-tournament, essentially, after watching him lead the field tee to green through 2 rounds. And he's 6 under, and he's within striking distance. And yeah, I just think that is the obvious outlier, in my opinion. Where I would price him, if you ask me right now, it would be around 12 to 1, not 18, which is giving a ton of respect to the guy that I'm much higher than the market on, which is Ludwig, who's sitting above him. And Rory McIlroy is right in that spot. But to me, Gotterup's getting far too much for one really, really, really special round today. On this current odds board.
Yeah, and frankly, if Ludwig happens to, I mean, I guess he could backtrack, but if he happens to birdie another one, I don't know that Xander's odds would get really any longer. I guess they could move to 20 to 1, but yeah, 18 to 1. If you think the real leader is Fitzpatrick or Hall and it's 9 under, or if maybe Ludwig gets there, 3 shots back with 2 tournaments to play on a guy that's leading the field tee to green, and he's also named Xander Schauffele, makes a lot of sense. To me, anything north of 14 to 1, 16 to 1, 18 to 1 seems like a great number. 14 to 1, probably a pretty good number too, like you implied, Mike. Speaking of Xander, let's talk about some finishing position plays. Mike, you like Xander as a top 10?
Yeah, I liked him top 10 pre-tournament. I still like it. I think it's a great opportunity. You can find it, including ties, by the way, at -105. I fully expect Xander to essentially stay where he's at on the leaderboard at worst. Again, the guy is leading the field tee to green. He was discounted in the market because he had one bad tournament at the Travelers after 6 or 7 tournaments where he was trending in the right direction. So kind of think that this is a spot where Xander may not go on to win this tournament, but it would be stunning to me if he wasn't in that top 10, including ties, by the time this is all done.
Rick, any finishing position plays for you?
Yeah, I'm actually with Mike on kind of doubling down on some things that I've had from before the tournament. So I've laddered Matt Fitzpatrick here, winner, top 5, top 10, top 20, and I'm looking at his top 5 number right now at plus 180 or so. And we alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this is not the same Matt Fitzpatrick from 6 months ago or 3 months ago. He has plugged a lot of the holes in his game, and don't get me wrong, there were a lot, and it took a long time for him to plug them, but he is doing that. He's looking much like the maybe 2022 version of himself. Confidence seems high. This is a good golf course for him. Next week's a good spot for him as well. So I think it's a little bit too much to ask that Matt Fitzpatrick wins this golf tournament. I hope he does, but I think for the top 5 market at nearly 2 to 1 is certainly interesting.
Well, this is such a good illustration of how the live market can fluctuate. Because, Mike, none of us think, by the way, again, I have Matt Fitzpatrick outright, so I hope you're all wrong. I hope Matt Fitzpatrick cashes in and wins. However, none of us think he's actually going to win. He's 10 to 1. And we're talking about guys like Xander who are, 18 to 1 to win and only, a couple of shots back. Doesn't this speak to maybe just the benefit of live betting? Because you look where Matt Fitzpatrick is at, and even a guy like Harry Hall, and you're like, okay, they're in such good position to win this tournament, but there's 2 rounds left, and they're not necessarily the talent of the other guys that we've been talking about.
Yeah, no, it's the beauty of live betting. I think golf is one of, if not the best sport for live betting. It's between golf and tennis for me. Just so much can change so quickly, and it really presents opportunity, right? So, and there's just a massive volume of it. Whether we're talking tennis, it's tennis. There's a match nearly every day somewhere in the world. In golf, you have 150 players on the course, and you can probably bet on 80 of them at any given second, right? So, I think that it certainly is going to present some live betting opportunities going forward when you get a mix of this kind of talent at the top, and just frankly, just scoreable conditions. Again, I don't think we see another -9 this week, but I do think 6 is a number that is achievable again on Saturday.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I got to admit, because I'm about to give who my live outright pick is for now, or at least it was pre-show, but I think you guys are kind of convincing me otherwise, especially after seeing that Xander number. Like, I think I'm going to jump on that. So here's what happened. I hit that top Italian play, which I gave out on the early edge and on the early wedge best bets show. It was Francesco Laporta at plus 210 to be top Italian. Anyway, long story short, the other 3 guys in that market are going to miss the cut. So I was kind of feeling myself earlier in the morning, and Laporta was like 7 under. He did backtrack 1 stroke. He was 150 to 1. He was on 17. He was 12 feet away from another birdie. And I tweeted out, hey, he's 150 to 1 to win this thing. Like, I'm just saying, we already cashed the plus 210 bet, maybe a little sprinkle. I even recommended a sprinkle in the without Big Four market, without Rory, Scotty, Xander, and I guess Fleetwood was in that market. That market still exists. So that one you could have gotten at 90 or 70 to 1. So I feel like Laporta's not going to win this tournament. So I'm just going to backpedal just a little bit, although that without market's still there. Here's my finishing position bet. He's currently tied T26. Another guy that I supported pre-tournament. He was one of my 5 outrights. Ryan Fox. T20 is plus 140. Listen, I think Ryan Fox, we talk about Matt Fitzpatrick and how he's picked things up. Ryan Fox has picked things up all year. He's won a couple of tournaments. He can absolutely close the deal in terms of not winning the tournament, but having a good 4 rounds. T20 is plus 140. That also includes ties, really like Ryan Fox to have a good round 3 and a good round 4. All right, before we get out of this segment, let's just lay it all on the line. We got to pick one bet to win right now. Mike, who is it going to be?
I'm doubling down, tripling down on Ludwig. I think that he's going to be in a pretty good spot. Knock on wood, if he comes in clean from where he's at, I don't even need another birdie. Just don't give one back at this point. And I would feel pretty good about the position that he's in. And then Xander, at 18 to 1, you asked for 1, I gave you 2. I don't listen, but it's Ludwig for me.
Actually, that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted the guy you actually think is going to win and the guy that you think has like some betting value still on the board. Rick Gehman, is it, do you agree with Mike? Is it another name here?
Yeah, listen, we've talked about Xander, so I'll give you another one here. Nick Taylor's 30 to 1, and he is putting together the most like Nick Taylor stat profile that I could ask for, which is he's putting well. He's gaining 4 strokes on approach. He's driving it well. We talked about this before. He's kind of a bulldog. And when he gets in it, he's very, very difficult to shake. I think it's fair to say that he is in it at 7 under par going into the weekend and hasn't shot that low round yet. 67, 66, go find that 64 on Saturday and then be in it on Sunday would be pretty interesting at 30 to 1.
So full disclosure, I'm going with Matt Fitzpatrick. That's what I have down on the little sheet here, and I absolutely hate it. But again, I'm just rooting for my guys here. If I had to, just from picking among the bets that you guys just talked about, it's definitely Xander for me. I'd love to be on Ludwig, just not at 5 to 1 or what might end up being a 4 to 1 in a second, whatever the case may be. I think Xander is a fun enough number at 18 to 1 to speculate on for the balance of the tournament. So I think that's what I'm modifying my pick to, but go Matt Fitzpatrick. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got to take a break, but coming back on the other side, we may touch a little bit more on Scottish Open as things are happening as this round is shaping down, if you will. But we are going to look to the Open Championship, maybe some expectations from Mike and Rick there, maybe some big names or even smaller names to look for next week. That's coming up next on the Early Wedge. We're back on the Early Wedge, and we do want to touch on a couple of things happening at the Scottish Open. But before we do that, Rick and Mike, let's talk about the Open Championship. I just want to give you guys a clean slate here. Rick, when I say give me a storyline for the Open Championship or just something you're monitoring, whether it's for this tournament or with something going into next tournament, what do you think?
Well, I think major championships, the venue often is the storyline that often takes the cake. So we're going to Royal Portrush next week and it's an Open Championship. So you've got to consider the weather. And we've gotten around Scotland this week, just an ideal, perfect summer week. I do not think that is going to happen next week. It's obviously very early. Things are going to change, but there is rain in the forecast every single day, Monday through Sunday. The wind is likely to be up. There's probably going to be half the field that's on the wrong end of the draw and gets ejected from this event just because, and that's what happens at Open Championships routinely. So we're going to get a proper Open, I believe, next week, which should be awesome.
All right, Mike, before I go to you, I just want to live report that Robert McIntyre, because a lot of people are paying attention to Robert McIntyre for multiple different reasons. He skipped his putt past. It looked like 3 to 4 feet. So he's got a touchy putt coming back. He should make it, but he's not definitely going to make it. So I want to throw that out there. Mike, going into
3.5 feet, Sia. 3.5 feet.
Oh, nice. 3 to 4 feet is exactly right, kind of, but 3.5, that is touchy. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure he's going to make it. Not that I'm rooting against him, right, Mike? But yeah. let's talk about the Open Championship next week. Any storylines? You know, Mike, one thing that resonates with me when I think of you is that these LIV guys are coming back. You've been a big Bryson guy coming into most of the majors this year. Any thoughts on the LIV Tour guys, you know, being in this championship? And do you still like guys like Bryson or John Rahm or a Brooks Koepka, or just name the LIV Tour player?
You know, when I look at, it's interesting when you get the LIV players for sure. It's interesting when you just look at some of the odds for the players that are in this field this week and next week. One that stood out to me was Ludwig's odds next week are much lower than they were this week. Like, you caught a better number in a weaker field this week than you are next week. Always interesting when you see that. But I think the market's got it right on the LIV guys in terms of where they're priced. And what I mean by that is you see John Rahm ahead of Bryson DeChambeau. I think it makes sense given the format, the course, everything there. Out of everything that I would expect from Bryson, I would expect this to be more difficult than some of the other tests that he plays in the United States when it comes to majors. So I am in agreement. I like John Rahm. I think Scotty is a deserving solo favorite anytime he decides to play a golf tournament. I can tell you right now, I will not have him matching the market at plus 400. I will probably be in the plus 800 range on Scotty. So not going to be playing that, but yeah, very interesting stuff with the LIV guys, and generally agree with how they're priced in the market on first glance.
Rick, can you touch on the thing that Mike said when he was contrasting and comparing John Rahm to, let's say, a Bryson, for example, in terms of like just the link style, the test that Royal Portrush is going to have? Can you kind of maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, links golf is for the artist. Links golf is for the creatives. It's for the guys that love the options, can play the ball on the ground in a variety of ways, and can kind of think through a golf course abstractly. That's the opposite of what Bryson DeChambeau has tried to do for the last decade. He has tried to remove all artistry from his game and be the mechanic, right? It's this super strong forearm lock that he does with the putter, and the way that he reads greens, and the way that he has single length irons. It's all of that stuff that he has tried to remove variables. We'll see an Open Championship on a link style golf course is variables on variables on variables. So you would assume it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him.
And Rick, while we have a few seconds left, Mike also referenced the odds board. We got Scotty at the top at plus 450, then Roy very close behind at plus 700, Rahm, Bryson, Lowry, Fleetwood, Hatton, and then Xander at 22 to 1. Any of those numbers or any of those positions alarm you? Are we taking Xander again with a few seconds left here?
The Xander stuff is crazy. Yeah, I mean, he is. I'm waiting for the wins. Maybe they don't come, but that number's much too long. I'd also be interested in Victor's number as well. It's probably even longer.
Mike, you interested in that Xander number or Victor coming into next week?
I am, honestly. I'd found Xander right now at 25, even with just a little shopping. Victor at 30. Would have some interest in both of those guys quite a bit.
All right. Well, the crowd goes wild, not just for the early wedge, but for Robert McIntyre, who made his par putt. He will survive the weekend, most likely at 1 under. Mike McClure, Rick Gehman, thank you very much. It has been a great early wedge show. You can catch us 4 days a week, and the next time you can catch us is very early Sunday morning on the SportsLine YouTube channel. That's where the early edge is. It's also where the early wedge is. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time on the early wedge.